welcome to the Big Barton Film Show with your resident host, Sudip Baduri. I hope you're all well, and I understand there's a heat wave round the corner. Let's hope that's true after the miserable drizzle that we've had recently. Every week I'm taking you back in time in my time machine with the cinema still in lockdown to a golden movie year. And this year is no exception. It's 1975, 45 years ago. I remember it well. It was the year of the very first Cricket World Cup hosted by England and won in an exciting finale by the West Indies against Australia. It also snowed heavily for one day in the middle of June in this country, and I was stuck in Buxton because of it, in the middle of June. Other news headlines of note: Margaret Thatcher was chosen as the leader of the Tories, the first woman to be elected. Charlie Chaplin, that famous silent comic, was knighted. And on the 6th of June, the UK joined the EU. How things have changed since then. In sport, Arthur Ashe was the very first black player to win a singles title at Wimbledon, winning the men's singles against Jimmy Connors. Muhammad Ali wins the Thriller in Manila against his arch-rival Joe Frazier. The great racing driver Graham Hill was killed tragically in a car crash. And in other news, the famous or infamous Spanish dictator General Franco passed away. The Vietnam War finally ended as Saigon surrendered, and the Betamax and VHS tapes are introduced to the public for the first time. At the cinemas, there were treasures beyond belief. Picnic at Hanging Rock, made by the Australian director Peter Weir, a haunting movie about a group of schoolgirls who take an outing to this famous landmark. Several vanish, others return with amnesia. What follows are scandals and attempted suicides. Breathtaking scenery, a very weird tale with a superb score by Bruce Smeaton. Sean Connery continuing his 007 aftermath in the superb Wind and the Lion. He plays a rebel leader who kidnaps an American woman, setting off an international incident involving Theodore Roosevelt and the Germans. Warren Beatty was wooing the women in his salon, together with his sexy persona in Shampoo. And James Caan was the anti-hero in the violent sports drama Rollerball, made by Norman Jewison. But what about my top three? Number 3, Dog Day Afternoon, made by Sidney Lumet, a very classy Hollywood director who came to fame with 12 Angry Men and The Murder on the Orient Express. This stars Al Pacino at his best as a bisexual man who has to finance a sex change operation for his transvestite male lover, played wittingly by Chris Sarandon. And he robs a bank, holding the employees hostage, but there's not much money in the bank. Pacino is both funny, naive and tragic. The heavy use of colourful language and the scorching violence makes this a memorable experience by a classy director. Number 2, just missing out on my number 1, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, made by Milos Forman, produced by Michael Douglas, starring Jack Nicholson at the height of his skills, together with Louise Fletcher and Chris Lloyd, based on the book by Ken Casey. And Nicholson plays Randall McMurphy, a convict who feigns psychosis to get a cushier sentence, and he gets admitted to a mental institution, becomes the target of a sadistic nurse called Ratched, played brilliantly by Fletcher. And Nicholson will bring in card games, basketball, and even smuggles in 2 prostitutes for the patients. But Ratched will be waiting and will be causing havoc for Nicholson's well-being. Electrifying at all levels, with screen debuts for Christopher Lloyd, Danny DeVito and Brad Dourif. But my number 1 has to be Jaws. This was a close call, but I had to choose it. The first ever summer blockbuster to be advertised and revered worldwide, made by a young, up-and-coming Steven Spielberg. And the rest is history. Now aged 74, he's one of the pioneers of modern Hollywood filmmaking, and this was his first major cinematic success. Based on the book by Peter Benchley, we all know the story about Amity Island, the great white shark terrorising the potential smorgasbord of tourists, a money-grabbing town mayor, a tough cop out to get the shark with, a Captain Ahab-like shark hunter, and a marine biologist. Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, a box office smash, some truly terrifying moments, and a universal fear of, should we go in the water? I avoided the ocean for some time afterwards. The John Williams score is effective and legendary and now a cliche. And will you go into your pool 45 years later? My film of 75 is Jaws.